Hello friends, today we are going to continue chapter number 8, Natural Resources, lecture 4. In the previous lecture, we discussed about the different types of natural resources. We discussed about biotic, abiotic resources. We discussed about renewable, non-renewable resources. We also discussed about some of the examples related to the different types of natural resources. We also discussed about the uses of these resources, that how these resources are useful to us. We looked and discussed about how the resources are useful as a food resource. We saw the example of that. After that, we discussed about how these resources are important as the source of raw material for some key industries and basic industries. And after that, we also learned about how these resources are important for as energy resources for generating electricity. So we discussed about the meaning and explanation about these resources, natural resource, then the types of resources, uses of resource. Now today in this session we are going to discuss about the topic, that is the classification of resources. Now after understanding the meaning and types and uses of these resources, now we will look at the classification of resources. These resources are classified into different types. Let us discuss about this classification of resources in detail. Here it is said the classification are done on three types. First, classification on the basis of reavailability. Second, classification on the basis of ownership. And third, classification on the basis of distribution. So here are the three types of classification that is done of these resources. Now we will look one by one in detail about this classification and understand it. First, classification on the basis of reavailability. On the basis of reavailability, if we classify the resource on the basis of reavailability, that we discussed in the previous session, that there are two types of resources that we can classify on the basis of reavailability, that is renewable resources and non-renewable resources. So what is renewable resources and what is non-renewable resources? That is classified on the basis of reavailability, that whether that resource is reavailable for us or not. Now what is renewable resources? That we learned in the previous session, that whatever resource that we can produce again after it is utilized once, after we have utilized it, it can be produced again, then that resource can be considered as renewable resource. And what is non-renewable resource? Then it is clearly said it is totally the opposite of this non-renewable resource, that whatever resource that is utilized once, it is getting destroyed, it is not available again. So that kind of resource are called non-renewable resource. We looked at the example of renewable resource like solar energy, wind energy. That kind of resources are considered as renewable resources. We also looked at the examples of non-renewable resources like petroleum, coal, natural gas. These are the examples of non-renewable resources. So the classification on the basis of reavailability can be done as renewable and non-renewable resources. Now moving towards another important part, that is second, that is classification on the basis of ownership. Now when we think about any material or any resource, the first thing comes in our mind is that who is the owner of that resources, because we know that if we use anything, we need to understand that who is the owner of that particular resource. Then and then we can use. We cannot use the resource that is owned by some other country or some other people. So here we need to understand the resource. So here it is classified on the basis of ownership. So let us see. Here three types of ownership are seen. First, it is said individual resources. We are very much aware about the word individual resources. Individual means we can also say personal resources, right? So when we are talking about individual resources, we can say that it is limited to me. If I am talking about my individual resource, right? If I am talking about my resource, my individual resource, then that is limited to me. So here individual resource means that is owned by individual or family, right? Then that thing, that particular resource can be considered as an individual. And here when we are talking about the ownership, that who is the owner of that resource, then that can be either an individual person, it can be a family that might have got that particular resource in its heritage. So here it is a individual resource is owned by an individual or family. Here are the examples of that. Here land, we can see land, right? We lots of people see that there are lots of landowners in the villages, right? They have their own lands. So that owner of that particular land is an individual person. So that whatever is produced from that land, that resource can be considered as an individual resources. For example, if there is a farmer and he has his own land in a particular village, and if he is producing wheat from that land, then that wheat is a resource of that particular individual person. So that wheat can be considered as an individual resource. Another is building. As we all are aware, building, if we have any house or if we are having any shop or house, these all are considered as an individual resource. For it, the house can be of an individual person or it can be owned by their grandparents and it can be passed from generation to generation. So here that land, building, house, shop, the shop also, it can be owned by an individual person. Here it can be, shop also can be considered as a resource because again it comes in the use. It is fulfilling the need of many people. Many people get these necessity things from particular shop. So that shop is considered as a resource, and if it is owned by a particular person, that shop is considered as an individual resource. Same way, any industry, we all know that industry can be also be considered as an important resource for any country because it fulfills the need of the people. It is coming in the use of people as well as for the welfare of the country in doing a lot of production for the country and the people. So that industry can also be owned by an individual person or a partnership basis. So that industry can be considered as an important resource, but which kind of resource? It can be considered as an individual resource. So the ownership of these all things, land, building, house, soap, industry, etc., can be considered as individual resources. Now let us take a look about second, that is national resource. Now by the word national, we can ourselves understand that this resource, national resource, means that resource can be considered of the nation, of the whole nation. The resource that are owned by a country or a region which belongs to the people of the nation. a very clear understanding detail about the national resource. Whatever resource that is owned by a country whose ownership is the central or state government, who is owned by the country, the ownership is not of any particular person, right? Then that ownership that is owned by a country or a region means either state government or central government, then it and that particular thing belongs to the people of that nation. All the public property, we can say that all belongs to the people. So that all thing can be considered as the national resources. Here are the example. For example, the army of our country that is working for the security of the country, for the security of the people of our country. There is no owner, no individual owner of any of the army, navy or air force. Any of the defense wings does not have any individual owner. They are the national resource, right? So another is railway. Railway is also the property of nation. There is no individual owner of railways in our country. So railway can also be considered as a national resource because it is working for the welfare of the country. It is the very important mode of transportation for our country. Another is forest. We can see lots of forest in our country, and that all forest belongs to our country. There is no individual owner. Rivers, yes, rivers is also an important resource that belongs to our country. No person can say. For example, we have Ganga river, which is considered very holy in our country. We worship Ganga river as well, and it is also utilized for many purposes. So this water of Ganga, no person in our country, no individual person of our country can claim that Ganga river is the property of that particular person. He is the owner of Ganga river. No person can claim for that because Ganga river is the property of the whole country. So it can be considered as the national resource. Same way, all the rivers of our country can be considered as the national resources. Now if we move forward, the third thing, that is the global resources. Now after completing individual resources means personal resource, national resource when we are talking about the whole country. Now the third, that is about the global resource. Global resource means that we can consider about the whole globe, about the whole universe. Here we say all physical and non-physical resources which are used for human welfare. All physical and non-physical resource, whatever is available from the nature, whatever is available from the environment that is used for the human welfare, it includes the earth's and natural resources. Whatever resources that we get from the nature, that the earth is sharing for each and everyone, there is no discrimination in this. All the natural resources that is shared by the earth to each and every country, to each and every people on the earth, that each and every resource can be considered as the global resource. So let us see the example. Resources of common ownership of all nations of the world. Here the ownership is common. There is no individual or national owner of these resources. This resource, the owner of this resource are each and every countries of the world. Means it is the common ownership of all the countries of the nation. For example, huge oceans that are present on the earth, the outer space, the atmosphere that is present on the earth, this each and everything, the owner of this each and everything is considered as global resources because the owner is common. Each and every country of this world is considered as the owner of these resources, and that is why these resources can be considered as global resources. Now the third classification, that is the classification on the basis of distribution. Up to now we covered classification on the basis of reavailability and classification on the basis of ownership. Now moving towards the third classification, that is the classification on the basis of distribution. How these resources are distributed. Let us see the classification. Again, there are four types of classified resources. Here first is universal resources. Here the resources are distributed in the universe. Universal resources. Here it is said some useful gases that are present in the atmosphere. We know there are lots of gases in the atmosphere, and that gases that are present in the atmosphere, that are seen in the whole universe. So that resources, that gases that comes in our use, and that is fulfilling our some or the other needs, and that is useful for our surviving as well. That resource is universal resource, right? Here the examples are given like oxygen, nitrogen, air, water, such kind of thing. These each and everything are considered as a universal resource, right? Second thing is generally available resources. Here the clear explanation is that generally available. Generally we can easily, these resources are easily available to us. Easily available resources. If once it is utilized, again we can obtain it. So one kind of renewable resource also we can say. Here it is said land, it is easily available. Soil, water, sunlight, etc. These kind of resources can be considered as generally available resources, right? Third is rare resources. The word rare itself shows that it is not available easily. It is rare available resources. These resources are available at limited places only. We can see these resources at limited places. So that is why it is said rare available resources. The examples are minerals like coal, petroleum, copper, gold, etc. So such kind of minerals can be considered as rare available resources because it is very difficult to obtain them again and again. So that is why it is considered as rare resources. And the last one is solitary resources. The resource that is available only at one or two places in the world. So rarest we can say, right? The minerals that are available only at one or two places in the world. The rarest we can say, solitary resource. The best example is chirolite. It is the mineral sodium aluminum fluoride, and it is said this resource is available only in Greenland. Greenland, which is located in the continent of North America, part of the Kingdom of Denmark. So this chirolite is available in the Greenland only. So this chirolite can be considered as solitary resource because this is available only at the one place in the world, and that is why it is considered as solitary resource. So this was the classification on the basis of distribution. So today let us take a look what we discussed today, that is the classification on the basis of reavailability, classification on the basis of ownership, and classification on the basis of distribution. We discussed first, that is on the classification on the basis of reavailability, that is renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Resource that is obtained when it is utilized easily, that is renewable resources, and the resource that is not available once it is utilized, it gets destroyed, it is non-renewable resources. Then classification on the basis of ownership, we saw the classification on the basis of ownership. Three types of classification in there. We saw the global resources, we say national resources, and we also saw the resource that is common purpose, that is used for common purpose. So all the three classification on the basis of ownership. Then third was classification on the basis of distribution, that we just saw, that is the universal resource, generally available resource, rare resource, and solitary resource. Universal resource, that is the useful gases that is present in the atmosphere. The examples are oxygen, nitrogen, air, water, etc. Second was generally available resources, that is the resource that are easily available in the world, like land, soil, water, sunlight, vegetation, etc. Third is rare resource. Here the word itself says rare, means it is not available easily. Those resources that are available at limited places, like the minerals, coal, petroleum, copper, gold, etc. They are very rarely available. So they are considered as rare resources. And last was solitary resource, the resource that is found only at one or two places in the world, that are considered as solitary resource. The example was given as carolite, that is only found in the Greenland that is located in the continent of North America. So this was the classification of resources. Thank you.